It was meant to be a routine morning, the kind of day where parents rush children to daycare and suburban streets hum with the predictability of everyday life. But on July 31, 2025, the peaceful facade of Melbourne's northern suburbs was shattered in seconds. In a narrow, unassuming laneway behind a family residence in Vollet, a chilling sequence of events unfolded. Just meters away from the innocence of a local childcare centre, the morning calm was interrupted by the deafening sound of an intense, calculated attack. 7 to 8 rapid echoes rang out in a brief 20-second window, signaling an unforgiving end for the target. The individual whose life was abruptly cut short was Athan Borsos, merely 21 years old. When first responders arrived at the chaotic scene, they were met with a deeply tragic sight. His silver BMW coupe sat abandoned, its exterior compromised by the severe impact of the confrontation, the surrounding pavement littered with the remnants of shattered glass. This was no random misfortune. To seasoned investigators, the scene communicated a clear, unmistakable message. It bore the hallmarks of a highly coordinated, deliberate underworld strike, executed with chilling precision. What made this unfortunate event exceptionally baffling was the path Athan was walking that morning. He was not heading toward a clandestine meeting, or navigating the shadows of the city's underbelly. Instead, the young man had just left home to fulfill a formal legal obligation at the Heidelberg Magistrates Court. The striking irony of being ambushed, while en route to answer to the justice system, paints a vivid picture of a life caught between deeply conflicting worlds. As detectives cordoned off the area, a grim reality settled over the neighborhood. Authorities quickly noted the highly targeted nature of the confrontation. The swiftness of the assault suggested the perpetrators had been meticulously watching, waiting for a vulnerable moment to strike. They knew his schedule and understood his movements. This level of surveillance implies a deeply rooted motive, transforming a quiet suburban thoroughfare into the setting for a much larger, darker narrative. As investigators began to piece together the fractured morning, they realized they were facing a baffling mystery. How does a man barely in his 20s become the focal point of such severe, organized retribution? To comprehend this heart-wrenching tragedy, we must first unravel the intense paradox of his incredibly complex, heavily guarded existence. The answers lay hidden in his past. Athan Borsos was a walking contradiction. A young man whose very existence seemed to defy logic. Born to a retired Victoria police officer, he was raised in the shadow of law enforcement, yet he chose a trajectory that profoundly fractured his family's legacy. His entanglement with the justice system began prematurely. Legal records illuminate a history stretching back to 2022, initiated by charges of a severe public altercation. From there, his docket rapidly expanded into more concerning territory. By the time of his tragic and untimely passing, he was juggling multiple active cases originating from incidents in Albert Park and Bundoora. His alleged transgressions spanned from the possession of ammunition and illicit substances, including testosterone and various prescription medications tosto. The deeply troubling destruction of an ESA emergency services vehicle. It was an astonishingly steep, relentless descent for an individual barely entering adulthood. To truly comprehend Athan's internal mindset, investigators simply had to observe the canvas of his skin. He wore his affiliations and personal philosophy plainly, branding his physical form with the permanent, severe symbols of the underworld. Etched prominently along the left side of his neck was a profoundly unsettling declaration: "The souls I have taken will never haunt me, only the ones I haven't." This specific, chilling quote perfectly mirrored the permanent ink of a notorious, fallen Sydney figure, casting a grim, prophetic shadow over Athan's own impending fate. Across his chest, the traditional term for the absolute code of silence was positioned starkly between a dagger and a massive crucifix. Furthermore, a solitary teardrop resting beneath his eye served to permanently anchor his identity within the uncompromising realities of street-level loyalty, silent endurance, and perpetual conflict. Yet beneath this incredibly hardened, formidable exterior, there existed clear, undeniable signs of vulnerability and devotion. Boldly displayed on his upper arm in vivid red capital letters was the name of his fiancée, Scenaria Raphael. This stark contrast highlighted a profound capacity for deep affection amidst the intensely chaotic environment he navigated on a daily basis. Furthermore, his standing within Melbourne's illicit networks presented a fascinating anomaly to intelligence analysts. Possessing a Greek background, His early recruitment as a teenager into a syndicate predominantly composed of individuals from Middle Eastern descent was highly irregular. This unique placement spoke volumes about his perceived utility and unwavering allegiance within those heavily guarded ranks. He was an intense, baffling puzzler-devoted partner, the offspring of law enforcement, and a trusted operative within a sprawling, shadowy enterprise. As authorities traced his complex connections, they unveiled an organized operation that stretched far beyond the quiet suburbs. To understand the sheer magnitude of the tragedy that befell Athan Borsos, investigators had to look far beyond the suburban streets of Melbourne. They had to map the sprawling, deeply entrenched architecture of Australia's illicit tobacco black market. Intelligence dossiers painted a picture of a young man inextricably linked to a formidable street-level crew, a faction allegedly operating under the formidable shadows of international fugitives. From as early as 2022, Athan's name began surfacing in connection with a syndicate initially orchestrated by Ahmed al-Hamza, a suspected major trafficker in illicit goods, and later commanded by Kazem Kaza Hamid, an exiled syndicate boss, now reportedly coordinating operations from the Middle East. The anomaly of Athan's presence within this specific circle cannot be overstated. Recruited while still a teenager, his integration into a tight-knit faction predominantly comprised of individuals of Middle Eastern descent was highly unusual. Yet it was within this fiercely loyal, heavily guarded environment that he reportedly found his footing. Before al-Hamza fled the country for Dubai, this particular crew was subjected to intense police scrutiny, continually linked to a series of severe neighborhood disruptions, aggressive property invasions, and intense physical altercations across Melbourne's northern and western corridors. Athan was not merely on the periphery, he was allegedly embedded in the daily mechanics of their operations. When the leadership dynamics shifted, and Hamid resumed ultimate control from overseas, following his deportation, the stakes grew astronomically higher. This was no longer a localized, street operation. It was a highly lucrative, multi-billion-dollar enterprise, overseeing hundreds of unregulated tobacco fronts nationwide. The immense financial gravity of this black market created an environment where loyalty was paramount, and the consequences of any perceived misstep were unfathomable. Athan navigated this volatile landscape daily, acting as a crucial cog in a massive, international machine. For investigators piecing together the events of July 31st, his deep ties to this lucrative network provided a chilling context. The sheer volume of untraceable capital flowing through the illicit tobacco trade meant that rivalries were settled not with mediation, but with decisive, unforgiving actions. His involvement in this vast, unseen economy transformed him into a high-value asset, but simultaneously placed a perpetual invisible target on his back. As detectives delved deeper into the syndicate's inner workings, they began uncovering disturbing connections to historic tragedies, deliberately linking Athan's present reality to dark, lingering whispers of the past that the city's unforgiving criminal underworld had long refused to ever truly forget or forgive. To completely grasp the intense severity of Athan Borsos' final moments, detectives realized they had to delve deeply into the closely guarded secrets of Melbourne's recent history. The most unfathomable allegations shadowing this young man's brief existence involved highly coordinated, severe acts of retribution directed at prominent, heavily fortified figures. In June of 2022, the community was entirely stunned by a brazen ambush targeting Sam Abdul Rahim, a man widely recognized by his moniker, the Punisher. While departing a solemn gathering in Fawkner, Rahim was suddenly confronted and critically wounded by multiple projectiles. Demonstrating astonishing physical fortitude and sheer survival instinct, he remarkably managed to navigate his vehicle to a local law enforcement precinct. Despite sustaining severe, life-threatening injuries, Sam Abdul Rahim is by no means an ordinary individual within these circles. Having previously operated as a formidable enforcer for a well-known outlaw motorcycle organization, he eventually attempted to distance himself from that incredibly volatile lifestyle to forge a new path as a celebrity boxer. However, attempting to permanently sever ties with deeply entrenched underworld alliances rarely occurs without a profound cost. The intelligence community viewed the severe incident against him as a harsh, undeniable message. No one simply walks away from the syndicate without facing intense consequences. Confidential sources have long theorized this highly coordinated strike was orchestrated by associates of Kazem Kaza Hamid, with intelligence files suggesting Athan was allegedly among the active conspirators. If you are captivated by this intricate web of loyalties and want a full deep dive into Sam Abdul Rahim, make sure you check out my detailed video covering his entire story right after this. Yet, the unsettling whispers connecting Athan to historical mysteries did not end there. Independent investigative outlets have published even more unfathomable claims, pointing toward a deeply tragic event that unfolded on May 5, 2022. Just before midnight outside a residence in Mickleham, 22-year-old Corey Kasuchi approached a parked white BMW to converse with its unseen occupants. Moments later, the situation escalated into a fatal act, and Kasuchi tragically lost his life at that very location. While authorities released security footage capturing two individuals of interest, the baffling mystery remains officially unresolved. Kasuchi navigated incredibly complex networks, maintaining documented associations with prominent crime families. Independent reports eventually named Athan as the alleged primary individual responsible for this heartbreaking loss. While his direct involvement remains legally unproven, a chilling, undeniable pattern emerges. His own untimely demise fits perfectly within the brutal, unforgiving logic of Underworld score settling, a symbolic act of extreme severity designed to punish past transgressions or issue a permanent warning to those who remain. The haunting shadows of 2022 had finally caught up with the present. In the devastating aftermath of the targeted strike, the incredibly chaotic, heart-wrenching scenes on Champions Parade provided a stark, deeply human counterpoint to the absolute ruthlessness of the act itself. A young woman, understood to be his devoted fiancée, collapsed near the perimeter, completely overwhelmed by the unfathomable tragedy. Overcome with immense grief, she was heard crying out that he had promised never to leave her alone in this world. Shielded by empathetic officers, she heartbreakingly pleaded with authorities to check the scene just one more time, unable to accept the permanent reality that he was truly gone. While loved ones grieved, investigators rapidly mobilized, tracing the calculated escape route. Roughly 20 minutes away from the fatal confrontation, authorities located a scorched white Nissan Patrol abandoned on Amory Street in Reservoir. This vehicle, believed to be the primary method of escape, had been intentionally set ablaze to destroy any lingering forensic evidence. Further highlighting the premeditated nature of the crime, detectives discovered the vehicle's identification plates had been swapped with those belonging to a completely unrelated black BMW. Detective Inspector Dean Thomas, leading the investigative efforts, addressed the public, urging anyone with pertinent information or active dashcam recordings to immediately come forward. The loss of Athan Borsos is not an isolated incident. It represents the latest chapter in a deeply troubling sequence of organized conflicts plaguing Melbourne. His untimely passing closely follows the highly publicized fatal 2025 attacks on prominent figures such as Sam Abdul Rahim and Harshirwani, both of whom lost their lives in similarly brazen ambushes. Law enforcement officials now harbor intense fears that this latest high-profile tragedy could serve as the catalyst for yet another relentless cycle of retaliatory actions. It is a painfully familiar pattern in a city where criminal alliances shift constantly, yet the human toll continues to climb. Whether the events of July 31st mark the definitive conclusion of a vendetta or the spark of a new conflict remains an unsettling mystery. What is absolutely certain is that the incredibly complex life Athan Borsos was inescapably pulled into will not fade from the public consciousness anytime soon. As this remains an ongoing investigation, I will be closely monitoring the situation and bringing you crucial updates. If you appreciate these detailed investigative deep dives into the Australian underworld, please consider subscribing and liking this video. It truly supports the channel. Until next time, take care.